Hello everyone and welcome to another episode of the Board Game Leprechaun. Today I'm going to be teaching you how to play the Expanse. So the Expanse is a 2 to 4 player game of politics, intrigue and conquest in our solar system. It is based on the TV show The Expanse, which is currently in production of season 4 at the minute for Amazon Prime. And the TV show is based on a series of very popular books. I think it's on book 8 or 9 in that series at the moment. So in the Expanse, what you will be doing is you will be purchasing cards which will help you place influence in our solar system. You can build fleets, and the best bit is that you get to mess with your opponents. So you will play as one of 4 factions. You have Earth, the United Nations, which is basically it's a very politically powerful faction in the game. You have Mars, the Martian Congressional Republic, which is the very powerful military faction in the game. You have the Outer Planets Alliance, the OPA, which represent all the people that live in the asteroid belt and the outer planets of Jupiter and Saturn and the various moons there. And then you have the big bad evil corporation Protogen, and they have discovered, the show's big mystery is a thing called a protomolecule, and basically Protogen have discovered this protomolecule and they're doing nasty experiments on this protomolecule. But I won't say any more than that if you haven't seen the TV show. As I say, it is a bit of a mystery. So let's go and learn how to play the Expanse. So before we set up the game, let's take a look at the map. So the board is basically a map of our solar system. It's split into different sectors. You've got the inner planets, the belt, and the outer planets. Then we have bases. So bases are where we place influence, and each base has a special resource icon, which is what it can produce. So as you can see, Marner Valley, Londres Nova, Luna, Africa, they are all bases. Then you have orbitals. So these are orbitals. And the only thing you can place in orbitals are fleets. Around planets, orbitals have multiple bases. You can see around Earth, Mars, Saturn and Jupiter, there's multiple bases. But in the belt, each orbital only has one base. The last thing to mention about the map is bands. Bands are what are used for movement. So a little bit different to sectors. So the inner planets is a band, the belt is a band, but the outer planets is separated into 2 bands. So you can see this thick purple line separates the outer planet sector into 2 separate bands. Saturn is in the outer band and Jupiter is in the inner band of the outer planets. Okay, let's set the game up. So each player gathers their faction mat and faction components. So your influence markers, your fleets, tech cards, which will give you abilities as you upgrade your tech during the game, and any other tokens, because each faction in this game has their own special abilities. So you might have special tokens only meant for your faction. Then you will If you turn the faction mat over, it will then tell you where you start, your starting fleet's location and your starting influence. So you will place all these on the board now. So next thing, choose first player. So chosen randomly, Mars is going to be our first player, and then set up the initiative track. So Mars will be first, and then I've just gone clockwise order, Protogen and OPA. Whoever is last takes the Rocinante and its little fleet marker, and you will then put this fleet a marker on its home orbital. So the OPA, I've got the Rocinante, so they've put it on Tycho, which is their home orbital. The next thing we will do is set up the action deck. So the action deck, first thing you do is you take the scorecards out. There's 6 scorecards and you place them to one side. We're playing a 3-player game, so we will get all the cards that have the 3-player symbol, this little symbol here. So we get all them cards, take out anything that doesn't have the 3-player symbol, so any cards that have the 2-player symbol or don't have anything at all, so they will be used in a 4-player game. So we will shuffle the action deck. Then you will deal 5 cards into one pile. 5. Then you will deal 3 piles of 10. 1, 2, 3, 4. 10. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 10. And 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Any cards that are left over will go back in the box. For a 4-player game, it is 13 of these cards. For a 2-player game, you just do not deal the 5 at the start. You just deal 3 piles of 10. Then you will take the bonus cards, and you will put them in to each deck, like so. You put 2 in each deck, 2 bonus cards in each deck, like so. You will shuffle each deck. Shuffle each deck separately, then stack them on top of each other. Then you will place the 5 cards you dealt out at the start of the setup of the deck, and you'll place them on top of the deck. So you'll then deal the top 5 action cards from the action deck into the spaces on the action track, like so. The bonus sector tokens, you will keep them close to the board as you'll be using them later on. And that's it. That's the game set up and ready to go. So the starting player is going to take the first turn, and the starting player is Mars. So whoever's turn it is known as the active player. So on their turn, the active player can do one of 2 things. You select a card from the action track, or you can play a kept event, which basically is an action card you picked up earlier in the game, and you can play the event. So to take a card from the action track, these values here is how much it's going to cost in control points, which is CPs. So the Martians decide they want to take this card, which is Kenzo Gabriel. It's going to cost 1 CP, so you move down the track, the control point track 1, and now you have two further options. So you can use the event, and what using the event means is either you can use the event on the card straight away, or you can pay an extra CP, so you can pay an extra control point to keep this card and use the event at a later stage. So if you want to use it for the event, as I said, you can use the event straight away or keep it for a later stage. Very important thing to remember about events: you can only do the event if your faction icon is actually on the card. This card has all 4 factions on icons on the card, so that this card is eligible for every faction to do. But there is some cards, like for example, so this card, it only has Mars and OPA icon, so it means the event is only eligible for these 2 factions. So it means Earth and Protogen could not be able to do this event. The other thing we can do is we can use the action points. So this card has 4 action points, which is, I think, is the maximum any of these cards will give you. And with action points, you can move your fleets, or you can place influence, or you can build fleets. At the start of the game, everyone's fleets are on the board, so in the first couple of turns, you won't be able to build any fleets. So if you're going to use this card for the action points, then your faction icon does not have to be on the card if you want to use it for the action points. Important thing to remember is that if you do use it for the action points, then in initiative order, any faction whose icon is on this card will then get the choice to use the event. So for example, so we see here, so OPA, sorry, that should be the other way around. So Protogen are next on the initiative track, and then the OPA. So the Protogen would get the option of doing this event if Mars take the action points. If Protogen don't want to do it, then the OPA will get a chance. For example, if Protogen did decide to do it, to do the event on that card, they would move to the bottom of the initiative track. So if we see with this card, so if Mars had picked this card up and decided to use the action points, then the only other faction that can use this card is the OPA. So they're the only faction that would get the chance to use this card. And it doesn't really cost the OPA anything because they're already bottom of the initiative track. So if they had the option of taking that, using that event, then it would be a no-brainer really, because as I said, they're bottom of the initiative order. So action points can be used for 3 different things. So you can use them for moving your fleets, you can use them for placing influence on the board, and building new fleets. So the move action allows you, for 1 action point, you can move a group of fleets from one orbital to another. But the rules of movement state that the orbital has to be either in the same band or an adjacent band. So here, on a group of fleets, so Mars has 2 fleets in here, that's a group of fleets. If it had 3, another fleet, that's a group of fleets. So with 1 action point, it could move all of these fleets to another orbital, either in the same band, so the inner planets, or the adjacent band, which is the belt. So they're going to spend one of the 4 action points of this card, and they're going to move one of their fleets to Earth. And I'll show you why they're going to do that, why it's important to do that, because they want to now place influence. So they have 3 action points left. So with their action points, they're now going to start placing influence in the solar system. So they want to gain some influence on Earth. Now, you have to have a fleet in the orbital to be able to place influence on a base. So that's why Mars moved one of their fleets to Earth, because now they want to place influence. So one action point will place an influence in Africa. Then they've got a fleet in Ceres, so they want to place influence in Ceres. And one more action point left. So I think they're going to double down in Africa. So place another influence in Africa. So that's how you spend your action points, doing actions, so we spent all 4 action points, spent 1 to move, and then the other 3 placing influence cubes. And very important to remember that you can only put an influence cube where you have a fleet in the orbital. And so the last thing you can do with your action points is build. As I said at the start of the game, all your fleets are on the board, so you won't get the chance to build on your first turn. But there is cards and events that will remove your fleets. Other factions will remove your fleets. So basically, you will put your fleets back in your little space for your fleets here. And then if you wanted to get your fleets back out, you spend an action point. And then your fleets always have to go in your home orbital, which will be Mars for the Martians. So you can never ever spend the action points and do the event, or carry over action points to a next turn. So when you've used the event, whether it be for the action points and someone else has used the event, you place a face up in the discard pile. Then you move each card down 1, and then you will turn the next card face up from the action deck. So as the game goes on and people just continue to select action cards and go through the action deck, the 6 scoring cards which you shuffled into each deck at the start, each pile at the start to make the action deck, they will appear onto the action track. And then similarly, if you want to select a scoring card, you play the control point cost, and then you take the scoring card. And then a scoring round will happen. And what happens is, there's steps here you follow. Active player will secretly select the bonus sector. Each player can then play a kept event, so one of the events from an action card they might have kept earlier in the game, or whoever controls the Rocinante can play a Rocinante event. You score each base, gain new faction tech, which is your little tech cards. Build 1 fleet. If you have any fleets that have been removed, you can put 1 back out, and then you can determine who controls the Rocinante. So before I go into the different phases of the scoring card, I just want to go through control and how you score each base. So you basically, whoever has the most influence in each base will score that base. But orbital control is very important. And basically orbital control is decided by whoever has the most fleets in the orbital. And if you have orbital control, it will add 1 influence to whatever you have there. If you don't have any influence, so for instance, Mars have orbital control in Earth, so it will add 1 influence to the influence they already have in Eurasia. It'll add 1 influence in Africa. It won't give them 1 influence in Luna. They don't have any influence there, so it doesn't just give them 1, it just adds 1 to existing influence. Now, so what will that do to Eurasia means that it will now be a tie there, because they will have 2 influence each, because the orbital control is adding 1 to this value. In Africa, it will give them control, because they now have 3 influence, because the fleet adds 1, so orbital control adds 1, so it'll be 3-2, and obviously has no effect on Luna. Another important thing to remember when scoring, each faction has a bonus critical resource that each faction needs. So Mars, as you can see the critical resource icons in each base. And so if you fully control a base, then you will get bonus points if that base has your critical resource. So you can see Africa has the critical resource that Mars needs, so you will score an extra point, an extra CP there. Now the OPA, as you can see in Eurasia, the OPA have the green have the screen icon critical resource, and Eurasia has that, but they don't fully control this because Mars has orbital control. It adds 1 influence, so it's 2 against 2, so you can never claim the critical resource bonus if it's a tie. So let's just talk about the Rocinante for a moment. So the Rocinante, whoever controls the Rocinante in the scoring round gets to use one of these events. And it's like the Rocinante, it's a bit of a catch-up mechanic, because whoever's last place at the end of a scoring round will take control of the Rocinante. So it counts as one of your fleets. So let's do an example of using the Rocinante event in the scoring phase. So we'll use Naomi Nagata's event, which is move the Rocinante 1 band and remove one opposing fleet there. So if we look at Jupiter, so at the minute, the OPA, who controls the Rocinante at the moment, they've got 1 influence in each of these bases. But unfortunately, at the moment, Nasty Protogen have orbital control, so they're going to win every one of these bases. And that's bad news for OPA, because OPA also have both of the critical resources that all these planets have. Yeah. So that's bonus points down to Swanee. But luckily, the Rocinante is going to come to the rescue. So, because as I said with Naomi Nagata's ability, so she's going to move the Rocinante 1 band. So the Rocinante is going to move from Tycho to Jupiter, which is 1 band. And then it gets to remove 1 opposing fleet there. So she's going to remove the evil Protogen fleet. And so now that has become the reason the Rocinante was so important there, because it gave her the ability to add the Rocinante to her fleet, remove the Protogen fleet, which now gives her orbital control in Jupiter, which now also means that she's going to win each of these bases when it comes to scoring them. So similarly with kept events can do similar things. So if you keep an event that removes influence or lets you move fleets, you can play it now. And it always starts, so playing either a kept event or a Rocinante event will start to the left of the active player who chose the scoring card. So let's go back to the start of the scoring phase then. So the first thing you do is the active player chooses one of the 6 bonus sector tokens. That's going to be the bonus sector for this scoring round. There's 2 for each sector, 2 for inner planets, 2 for the belt, 2 for the outer planets. So the Mars are going to select the inner planets secretly, so no one else knows this, and then they will put it face down there. Then starting from the person left of the active player, so the player who chose the scoring card, each player then gets to play an event they have kept from earlier, and the player controlling the Rocinante, they get to play a Rocinante event like I just shown you. Then you will score each base, so you flick over the bonus sector tile and it shows that the inner planets is going to be the bonus scoring for this round. So let's go and score each base. So as I discussed earlier, so orbital control here is by Mars, so it adds 1 influence to Eurasia, which means it's going to be a tie. So when it's a tie, and this is now we're doing the bonus sector, which is the inner planets. So when it's a tie, both players get the second place scoring value, and nobody will get the bonus for the critical resource. So both players will get 1 CP each. So OPA gets 1 and Mars gets 1. So in Africa, orbital control adds 1 to the Martian influence. So that means Mars is going to win over there. So that means Mars is going to get 2 because they've won in Africa, and the OPA will get 1. So I'll put that on the scoring track. 1 for the OPA, 2 for Mars. Then down here we have Protogen. So Protogen have clear influence there. So they will gain 2. And then they will also gain 1 because this is their critical bonus. And actually I should have mentioned that as well with Mars. Mars will gain an extra CP because that is one of their critical resource bonuses. And similarly for Protogen. So you can see Protogen need that critical resource, and Luna has that critical resource, so they gain 2 points plus 1, so 3 points for for Protogen. Mars, they gain 2 points because they control Mariner Valley, because we're still in the inner planets. So we're still scoring the bonus sector. They also have one of the critical, this is a 3-player game, so they also have the critical resources in Mariner Valley. So they get 3 points for that one. They don't need this critical resource, so 2 points for Londres Nova. So let's just quickly skip over to the outer planets. So the inner planets and the outer planets will now score the same. So normal scoring. So just say we've scored the belt. The belt and the outer planets will now score the same. Yeah, so let's just skip over to the outer planets and score the outer planets. So the belt and the outer planets are not the bonus sector in this round, so they will score normal. So only whoever controls it gains 1. Second and third place don't gain anything. If there's a tie, no one gets anything. So as I showed you with the Rocinante event earlier, the OPA moved the Rocinante into Jupiter and got rid of one of the Protogen fleets, which basically now means that because of orbital control, OPA adds 1 influence here, 1 influence here, 1 influence here, which means it controls all 3 bases. So it will score 1 for Europa, and the OPA have that critical resource, so that's 2 for Europa, 2 for Ganymede, because they need that critical resource, and 2 for Io. So that's very lucrative. Jupiter's been very lucrative for the OPA, so they get 6 CPs. Then down here, So tie for orbital control, tie for control of the base, which means no, because it's not a bonus scoring sector, nobody gets any points for that one. And the critical resource is ignored. Then OPA done really well this round. They control this, they control this, they need this critical resource, so that's another 4 points. So then, once you finish scoring, so in each of these rounds, so you just look down the left of the scoring track on the board. That means you can build a fleet. If you have any fleets that have been removed from the board, you can now build them, place them in your home base. This means that you can start upgrading your tech. So as we just played the first bonus card, and it's the first scoring card. So everyone will take their tech card. So this is Protogen, and you will take the first tech card, number 1. This is now a special ability which you can now use for the rest of the game. Everybody does that. Everyone takes the number 1 tech card from their tech deck. Same with the Martians. So they'll take number 1. Pretty powerful one that is. And same with the OPA. Then, so you will then check the scoring track. So the minute we have OPA way out in front, Mars second on 15, and Protogen are lagging behind on 13. So what that means now is that Protogen will now gain control of the Rocinante, and it will stay. The Rocinante is on Jupiter. It will stay there, but it just means now it is part of the Protogen fleet. And that is how you score. And one last thing about the Rocinante is that it can never be removed from the board by an event ability. And so the game basically carries on like that. On your turn, you will either take action card from the action track, either use it for the event, keep the event for later, or choose the action points and use the action points to place influence, move fleets, or build fleets. And then the game will end as soon as the 6th scoring card is drawn from the deck. Not selected, so as soon as it is drawn, so that's the 6th scoring card. And then we enter the final scoring phase. Now you carry out a scoring round as normal, except for the person to the left of the Rocinante. Whoever controls the Rocinante is the person who gets to select a kept event first, if he has any. Then you will carry on the same. So there is no bonus sector in the final scoring round. But each player can still play a kept event, and it starts with the person to the left of whoever controls the Rocinante, and the person who controls the Rocinante, they can play a Rocinante event. Also, and the final scoring is going to be like so. And this is for every single base on the board. You're going to score 5 for whoever's first, 3 second, 1 whoever's third. And same thing, you will add all critical resource bonuses. Just add critical resource bonuses to your score, whoever wins each base. Same thing, you use orbital control to add 1 influence to influence you already have there. And then as soon as you've completed the final scoring round, whoever has the most control points wins the game. And that is how you play the Expanse.